Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to join us for the Canadian Business Aviation Association's annual general meeting. It's with great pleasure that we welcome you today to this session. For today's AGM, I'd like to go over a couple housekeeping rules. The meeting is being recorded for our records, and so this helps us for the voting records and the speeches, etc. We will have that record. All participants will be muted, and your screen displays will be turned off. However, you will have access to the chat function and menu reactions, and we can unmute you should you have any questions throughout the session. Be sure to have your full name and company name displayed on your profile, in other words, the Zoom profile, for chatting and voting purposes. I'd ask that you now go to the Participants tab. If you're familiar with Zoom, it's on the bottom sort of button bar, Participants, find your name, hover and select More, and then Rename. Please have your full name and company for our voting record. And you're starting to see that now. I see Constantine, Aiden, Isabel, etc. So thanks for doing that. A reminder that only associates and operator members of the association can vote on the motions. Each motion for approval will be typed into the chat, and Amy is already demonstrated that now, with a reminder, of course, to include your full name and company name as required. So to vote, simply type your response into the chat. Andy, our chair, will call for a motion. You'll have the opportunity to just write yes or no in the chat. That helps us log the result. We'll know then with your name and company name who you are and what the vote was. Once the vote has been confirmed by a mover and a seconder and all in favor, the vote will be carried and we can move on to the next round. If you've got any questions throughout the meeting, you can also type your questions into the chat. I'll be monitoring that and we'll respond to your questions later into the session. So that covers the AGM procedures. If you've got any questions, please type them into the chat. Hearing none, seeing none, and seeing you all join, let's get started. I'd like to introduce Andy Naredin, CBAA's chair of the board, to start the AGM. So Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Anthony. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Bienvenue à tous, bon après-midi. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I would like to welcome new and returning members of the Association's 64th Annual General Meeting. My name is Andy Naredin. I'm a retired Vice President of Customer Support at Bombardier, and I'm the Chair of the Canadian Business Aviation Association. Just a reminder of the purpose of the AGM. It is to inform members of the activities regarding the Board of Directors during the past year, to ratify the actions of the Board and present various financial and other reports required under the bylaws of the Association. And please note that the items in today's AGM package were previously circulated to members on April 7th, 2025. As you can see, the agenda that we're going to be following today. As Anthony has mentioned, please note that only operator and associate members of the association may vote. To ensure that we have quorum, Anthony, could you kindly confirm whether we have met quorum?
We do, Andy, with over 10 members, we do have quorum.
Excellent. Thank you. As part of the first agenda item, I'd like to call for an adoption of the 2024 Annual General Meeting minutes. May I have a motion to waive the reading of the 2024 AGM minutes? May I have a mover?
We've posted it into the chat, so Esan is the first to move. Aiden is seconded, and then we have got Rod and Jared continuing.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the mover and the seconder, and for everybody that's weighed in. All in favor?
Feel free to write yes in the chat. There we go. We're getting a great pile of yeses. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Any opposed?
None noted, Andy.
Okay, then the motion is carried. Is there any business arising from the 2024 minutes?
None
Okay.
noted chat right now.
Very good. We'll go ahead and move then to the vote. I ask for a motion to adopt the 2024 Annual General Meeting minutes. Can I have a mover, please?
Ed Ratzlaff Airvoil has moved.
Thank you, Ed. Seconder?
Looks like Dave Smith, Roarjet.
Dave, thank you. Any discussions on the minutes?
No comments noted so far, Andy.
Perfect. Thank you. All in favor?
We're seeing great activity of yeses all so far. Karen, Matthew, Scott, Dave, Ronya. Perfect.
Thank you, everyone. Uh, any opposed?
None noted so far, Andy.
Thank you, Anthony. The motion is carried. Okay. With that, then I'll move ahead and provide my report. It is my honor to present to you with my annual general meeting report. And how the time has flown. It has been 1 year since I became chair of the CBAA board. And looking back, I can only say, in the characteristic understatement of the afternoon, that it has been a turbulent time for all of us. We've had regulatory changes, we've had the continued application of the luxury tax, the recent federal election, and of course, the ongoing threat of tariffs and counter tariffs. But as I met with the CBAA members over the past year, whether it's at our convention or the various chapter meetings, one thing has become abundantly clear. You know, the old saying that says our voice is louder when we speak together as one. That there, in a nutshell, is the value of our industry association. In an era when business is anything but normal, CBAA provides a steadying influence, helping you decipher how regulatory and political changes impact your business. At the same time, the association ensures that the value of business aviation and its priorities are not lost in the cacophony of voices competing to be heard by government. Over the past year, we held regional chapter meetings across the country, providing an opportunity for members to connect with CBAA leadership about the local issues that matter to them. We've also held our 2024 CBAA convention in Saint-Hubert, Quebec, where hundreds of business aviation stakeholders and supporters came together to benefit our industry. We also made it our goal this past year to demonstrate how individual members benefit from their CBAA affiliation. We've assisted member companies with questions about flight and duty time regulations, conducted a 3-part SMS webinar for business aviation flight departments, and made important recommendations to Transport Canada on approach ban regulations. Finally, we released the CBAA Hazards and Trends Report, which includes all 2024 data, enabling operators to meet their compliance requirements. Your active participation in the CBAA makes us all collectively stronger in these interesting times. I encourage you to maintain contact with the CBAA leadership, because that helps us to be more effective when we advocate for you. Share your pain points, network on best practices, and take advantage of the many privileges that come with your association membership. There are many opportunities to participate. We have airport committees, Transport Canada committees, event planning, and more. Raise your hand. We have a place for you. Speaking of representation, CBAA is proud to re-elect Dave Wager as the only non-commercial sector representative on the NAV Canada Board of Directors. Thank you, David, for recently accepting your second 3-year term. Since 2012, we have also been well represented at the International Business Aviation Council, the IBAC, by CBAA member Scott McPherson, founder of trainingport.net. Scott is the past chair of the IBAC and exemplified being a champion for our business aviation on the global stage. The CBAA would wish to thank Scott for his years of service and contribution at IBAC as our representative. Moving forward, CBAA is pleased that James Ellion of AirSprint Private Aviation is now joining the IBAC board to ensure continuity in Canadian representation. Thank you to Scott and James for stepping up for Canadian business aviation. And finally, I would like to acknowledge the CBAA Vice Chair, Jared Williams. Jared is the Chief Operating Officer and VP Operations at AirSprint and has held progressive business aviation roles since 1999. He serves on numerous industry advisory councils and was named Top 20 Under 40 Industry Achievers by Wings magazine. As Vice Chair, he makes an ongoing and valuable contribution to the success of CBAA. Jared, thank you for being a valuable wingman and Vice Chair. With that said, our goal is, and always has been, to keep Canadian business aviation flying into the future. Together, our voice is stronger. I encourage you to raise your hand and participate in your association. In today's world, we are facing new headwinds that challenge the way that we do business. If we fly together, we'll have a better chance of navigating the turbulent times ahead. I would like to now invite Isabelle Lafond, Treasurer of the Board, to share a few words. Isabelle, over to you.
Thanks, Andy. Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Bienvenue à notre Assemblée générale annuelle. As Treasurer of the CBAA, I'm pleased to share my report on the 2024 fiscal year-end. Last year, the association began working with a new auditing firm, Marcel Lavallée. They are an Ottawa-based accounting firm which has extensive experience working with not-for-profit organizations such as the CBAA. The auditors have reviewed and audited the CBA's financial statements, including the Statement of Financial Position, the Statements of Operations, changes in net assets and cash flows for the year that ended on December 31st, 2024. Generally speaking, I'm pleased to report that CBA's financial position remains solid. Revenues for 2024 total $1.28 million, which reflected a marginal decrease in static display revenue at the convention and a decline in sponsorship revenue. These were partially offset by an increase in the value of investments. Overall, the association's expenses decreased by 2% compared to the prior year. Please visit the CBAA website to see the complete 2024 financial results. Today, as we gather for our annual AGM, it's a good time to reflect upon the valuable role CBAA plays as the champion of Canadian business aviation. Your continued support and membership dollars help CBAA attack the luxury tax through continued communication with government and regulators, co-host Aviation Day on the Hill, boost member engagement through in-person outreach and online sessions, facilitate networking opportunities at the annual convention and regional chapter meetings, provide access to industry experts who delivered real-time updates, document downloads, and exclusive exemptions, and add value with their Association Aviation Medical Program and member webinars on SMS and audits. In short, your support allows us to be an effective voice for business aviation. The CBAA also engaged with airports to protect business aviation access and collaborated with regulators on exemptions to fatigue regulations, aviation medicals, type rating extensions, and aviation document booklets. This would not be possible without your membership dues and sponsorship dollars. The simple truth is, even the loss of one member impacts their bottom line. The CBA's mission is simple: to be the voice for business aviation in Canada. Since 1961, we have been active, establishing a reputation as a solid and stable industry partner and trusted advisor. A strong industry voice has never been so important. As we continue our work in accordance with the CBA's 2025 strategic plan, we'll be focused on forging new partnerships, delivering value for membership, navigating a way forward with the new government and ministers. Thank you for your support, and please consider recommending membership to your industry connections. In fact, CBAA has a program that rewards you for doing so. Email membersupport@cba.ca for more details. I would like to thank the ARC Committee, Constantine with Chartwright and Sean with Fast Air, the offices of the board, Chairman Andy Nurdin from Bombardier, Jared Williams at AirSprint, and the CBA staff and management team, Anthony and Amy, for their contributions and dedication throughout the year. Thank you. Back to you, Andy.
Merci, Isabelle. Thank you for your help, and also a big shout out to the Audit and Risk Committee and the fellow board members, as you mentioned. And thanks for your leadership, everyone. What I'd like to do is move on to the motion to adopt the financial statements for 2024 as circulated. May I have a mover, please, for the motion?
Rod Bernard has moved it. Ed Ratzlaff at Aerofoil is a seconder.
Thank you both. Any discussion?
Nothing noted as of yet in the chat.
Okay. We can move all in favor, I should say.
And we see Ed responded first, yes, and then the participants that followed. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. Any opposed? Okay, the motion is then carried. And as mentioned by Isabelle, we have appointed Marcy Lavallee as our auditors. I would like to ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Marcy Lavallee as auditors for the fiscal year ending on December 31st, 2025. May I have a mover?
Manny Fallon with Select Arrow has moved.
Thank you, Manny. Second.
Matthew Johnson, Fast Air.
Thank you, Matt. Any discussions or questions? All in favor, please.
Looks like Aid and Ed started us off, Scott, and the balance of the group so far.
Excellent. Any opposed? Okay, the motion is then carried. All right, if I can ask then for the slide with a motion to approve the returning directors, ratification of the board nominations. As you can see on your screen, the following is a list of directors agreeing to serve a further 2-year term until May of 2028. I ask for a motion that the list of directors put forth by the nominating committee be accepted for another 2-year term.
Isan Monfort, YYZ Law has moved.
Excellent. Second?
Aiden has seconded.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, please.
James Elliott started us off and receiving a group of yeses so far.
Perfect. Any opposition? The motion is then carried. Thank you very much. The next one is the motion to ratify the board of directors' decisions. Note for the board members that you cannot vote. We cannot vote on this. Just a bit of a background. This is a motion that supports the decisions of the board that is taken on behalf of the association. These are activities related to association governance, management, and finances, and includes, but is not limited to, planning, budgeting, staffing, bylaw revisions, board composition, association policies and procedures, fees, convention site selection, and approvals for new programs that require additional funding. In other words, it's the day-to-day management of the association and the oversight by the board. Once again, a reminder to current board members that we are not eligible to vote. And with that, I would call for a motion that the decisions of the board of directors since the last AGM be ratified. May I have a mover?
Isan Monfort has moved it.
Thank you, Isan.
Rod Bernard Kaltar seconded.
Rod, much appreciated. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, please.
Looked like John Fitzsimmons started us off with a yes, and then the yeses are remaining from folks that are not identified as board members so far.
Excellent. Thank you for that. All opposed? No one opposed. Okay, then the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, the next part is only to be, if there are any items here, let me maybe move on to invite Anthony to provide us with some of his remarks. Anthony is the president and CEO of the association. Anthony, over to you.
Thanks, Andy. And as the voice for business aviation in Canada, the CBAA is dedicated to advancing our industry's interests and ensuring continued growth and success. So a lot, and hopefully in the next, let's say, 9 to 10 minutes, we'll be able to take you through a little bit about where we've been and more specifically where we're going. It's an honor to address you today as we celebrate the accomplishments of 2024 and look ahead to the opportunities of 2025. This annual general meeting is a moment to reflect on our collective achievements and recommit to advancing the business aviation industry in Canada. I want to thank each of you, our members, for your time today and for your support throughout the year. In 2024, we achieved remarkable milestones as detailed in our annual report. Our advocacy efforts were particularly successful. We fortified strong relationships with government and regulators. We co-hosted the Aviation Day on the Hill, engaging with multiple MPs, senators, and staff members to promote our industry's interests. Our regular meetings with Transport Canada culminated in welcoming Félix Monnier, the Director General of Civil Aviation, to our 2024 convention. Member communication and engagement were top priorities. We boosted our outreach with monthly government and regulatory affairs update, amplified our social media presence, whether it's on LinkedIn, on X, Instagram, etc., and streamlined our website's search functionality. And stay tuned, there's going to be some exciting enhancements in best interest of our members in getting the information that is relevant. Our commitment to listening and adapting was validated by our membership survey, where an overwhelming 97% of respondents said they would recommend CBAA membership. This is a testament to the value we provide through our advocacy, through the networking opportunities, and access to timely information and influence. We expanded our member services portfolio, launching an association aviation medical program and offering complimentary webinars regarding safety management systems and audits. These initiatives were formed from member feedback, underscoring our commitment to listening and adapting. Additionally, we expanded our membership to include that new aviation professional category, welcoming students, retirees, and professionals to our community. On the advocacy front, we contributed operator perspectives to Transport Canada's preliminary issue and consultation assessment, the PICA. The paper focused on fatigue risk management system regulations, in effect, trying to right size for business aviation. We addressed the concerns about the complexity and the incompatibility with smaller operators. We also secured important exemptions and clarifications on medical validity, the aviation document booklet extensions, approach ban, and type ratings, alleviating operational burdens for our members. Sustainability is a growing focus. We joined the Climbing Fast campaign in partnership with NBAA and a number of other national associations, aligning with our global efforts to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050. This commitment will guide our environmental initiatives in the coming years. I want to express my thanks to our board chair, Andy Naredin, and to our audit and risk committee chair, Isabelle Lafont, for their outstanding leadership. My gratitude extends to the entire board and all CBAA members. Your contributions and support are the foundation of our success. So looking to 2025, we're posed to build on our momentum in light of the recent federal election, where the Liberal Party emerged victorious. This outcome aligns with the strategic framework outlined in our Political Action Plan 2025 for the Liberal Party of Canada. Just as a side note, prior to the election, the association had undertaken a deep dive into both what the Liberal Party would say in their platform and what the Conservative Party said in their platform. And we generated, and you'll hear about it further, plans specific to that. So these positions that we're taking, in this case with the Liberal Party of Canada, will allow the CBAA to advance business aviation by leveraging the Liberals' platform of economic unification, infrastructure investment, and technological innovation. Our plan identifies 4 areas for critical action. First, repealing the select luxury items tax, this luxury tax on business aviation, which hinders sector growth and contradicts goals of job creation and clean technology adoption. Securing infrastructure funding for business aviation to enhance airports, our FBO partners, and connectivity to remote regions. Excuse me, improving airport access. Now, this is an absolute issue. You'll hear more as we speak about airports like Montreal in particular, Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, the 4 majors, where slot constraints limit our efficiency due to construction planning, NAV Canada service levels, etc. Much work will be done in this area. enhancing NAV Canada services. So again, taking a position with the Liberal Party to address service delays and the modernization of our air navigation, potentially with AI-driven solutions. In other words, encouraging efforts that NAV Canada is undertaking. To achieve these goals, we are pursuing a structured 30, 60, and 90-day roadmap. In the next 30 days, we'll develop policy briefs using data from our 2023 economic impact study and engage with key ministers, as they're named next week, such as the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Transport, to align our priorities with the Liberal commitments made prior to the election. Over a 60-day timeframe, we'll amplify our message through a media campaign and stakeholder roundtables, proposing solutions like dedicated airport slots and a NAV Canada Modernization Fund. By 90 days, we aim to secure policy commitments, advocate for budget inclusions, and establish a national airport access strategy. Your continued engagement will be critical to realizing this vision. As we navigate the challenges ahead, I encourage every member to be a champion for business aviation. Network at our chapter meetings, engage with your MPs or MPPs, and share our industry story. To make our advocacy even more effective, we need to hear from you. Tell us your pain points early, because silence helps the opposition, not your association. So in closing, I am optimistic about our future. The foundation we've built in 2024, combined with our strategic approach to the new political landscape, positions us well for 2025. Thank you for your unwavering support. I look forward to working with each of you to shape the future of Canadian business aviation. Thank you. Andy, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I really appreciate that and appreciate yours and the association's efforts in that regard. And I like your 30, 60, and 90-day plan. So we look forward to hearing some more from you. I'd like to move to recognize a few valuable members of the association. In recognition of their service, we are awarding Paul Carter and Aidan Costello with appreciation awards, both will be completing their terms at the conclusion of this meeting. Dedicated volunteers like Paul and Aidan make the CBAA what it is today. We appreciate all that you have done for the association, for your professionalism, camaraderie, and network in raising the voice of business aviation throughout the years. Aidan and Paul, the association, and everybody here on the call, thank you. To those of you that are here today and who may be interested in joining the board in 2025, please be sure to email member support to get further information. Okay, very good. You can see that some of the accolades are, make sure you, Paul and Aidan, that you read those. There's some really nice things they're saying about you. Good stuff. Any new business, just the two items to close off the 2025 AGM. If there's any new business from the floor.
So far, looking at the comments, while I see the same notes of support, Aidan is there, Paul's there. Nothing noted with respect to new business, Sandy.
Okay, very good. We'll proceed to the final motion then. I ask for a motion to terminate the meeting.
Amy's pasted that in the chat. Isan has been first to move it.
Excellent. A seconder?
Matthew Johnson, fast air, second.
Thank you, Matthew. And any discussion?
None.
All in favor?
Ed Ratzlaff started us off, and the balance of folks are saying yes so far.
Excellent. Any opposed?
None noted.
Okay, then the motion is carried. I do see that there is one comment about the luxury tax for the BCAC agenda.
That's Dave. That's definitely Dave Frank adding the same element, and appreciate that, Dave. That support as well. It impacts all of us, so that's great to hear that that you guys from the province are supporting that effort. Thanks, Dave.
Indeed, thank you, Dave. Okay, with that, then this concludes the 2025. The motion is carried, and this concludes the 2025 CBAA annual general meeting. I'd like to call Anthony back and over to you.
Thanks, Andy. And as we continue, so this section, and thanks to each of you for taking the time out of your day. Stuart, I know, is joining us. He's in the chat. And so as I talk, Stuart, you can get prepared. I will actually share the screen here just shortly, and specifically the presentation. So what we wanted to do is expand a little bit on this concept of 2025 and beyond. And especially timely, of course, is the recent election that we all just went through. So it was what a unique time to be doing our chapter tours and meeting with each of you if you participated. I was engaged with Slido and asking questions about which party do you think would win. But either way, the result took place, and here we've got a new Liberal government. So I wanted to introduce Stuart. Stuart is with Hill and Knowlton, a team that we engage, the association engages with from a political influence and government education strategy. So, Stuart, what I'd like to do is introduce it to you. I think everybody can see now the deck that you've created, and this expands a little bit on that 30, 60, and 90-day plan that the association put forward, specifically targeting the Liberal campaigns. So, Stuart, if I could, I'll turn it to you. I think your camera is on, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Anthony, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me today. So, as Anthony said, I'll just give a brief rundown, and this is sort of following some of the presentations that we have given over the last couple of months. I guess this is the culmination of it. We gave one a couple previous to the election, and now post-election. I won't belabor. Obviously, I'm sure everyone is aware of the outcome and sort of what had transpired, but more specifically, talk about what's next and that engagement piece. So, Anthony, if I could just get you to change. So, obviously, this is the electoral map with some level of change. There might be there's a couple of judicial recounts that are ongoing, and we might see a seat or two change just given some of the very narrow margins that we had seen over the course of the last week or so. But for all intents and purposes, we ended up with a Liberal minority government, very close and just shy. To that end, obviously, what we had seen within there certainly was a broader shift from the NDP, certainly over to at least in a lot of ridings, but with some distinctions that certainly in Ontario, the polling numbers, I should say, were pretty much well spot on. It was really an issue with modeling that I think a lot of the polls that we had seen over the previous couple of weeks had indicated that Liberals might even win a majority. I think their numbers came out pretty solid as it relates to the general vote, but at the end of the day, some of the modeling was off, especially some of the 416 and the 905 votes really transitioned from NDP over to Conservative. So where that leads us, and then maybe we'll just switch over to the next slide. Really, as we transition over to the Carney government that begins this transition process. Right now, obviously, as I'm sure most of you are aware, Mark Carney was down in the United States yesterday to meet with Donald Trump, and I think we saw a pretty good indication of how he'll be running the show from the Prime Minister's seat and the Prime Minister's office. So within that, obviously, some insights into the Carney government really, they like to position themselves, and they've certainly mentioned it more than once, is that they're the adults in the room. And I think that can be reflected in some of the interactions that we saw with the US president yesterday. It was very much a different tone than we had seen previously with the other administration and some of their engagements. And from that perspective, from a geopolitical perspective, we certainly saw a leveling of the relationship and some of the rhetoric being toned down to a small extent, anyways, enough that it seemed to be the working relationship was moving forward. But to that end, the Carney government has to a couple of pieces. Obviously, within the next week, they're going to be naming a cabinet. And to that end, we did see a couple of members from the previous cabinet, McGuinty, Melanie Joly and Dominic LeBlanc were there with Mark Carney in respect to their current portfolios. I think at least we could probably expect that those two individuals will likely stay, but the decision has to be made. So, and just based on Anthony's plan as it relates to the 30 and 90 day, we're going to be seeing some pretty big movement right now. Obviously, the cabinet will be sworn in, as I said, very shortly. Both the Prime Minister's office and the Minister's office are going to be staffed up. To that end, obviously, they're looking at a bit broader of a talent pool as it comes to their staffing options, and certainly looking to people who have a bit more experience rather than might have been previously and under the Trudeau government. So from that perspective, we're going to be seeing a fair amount of movement. In that becomes a lot of opportunity for engagement, specifically as it relates to the luxury tax. Obviously, if you go back to the latter part of the campaign, Mark Carney was asked about it, said he was aware and would be looking into it, but we didn't get a lot more out of that interaction. From that perspective, as they start to move forward with some of these files, budget has to be number one priority because we're going to see the Liberal government come back for a throne speech actually delivered by, I'm sure you all have seen that the king will be in town to deliver that speech. That obviously is going to drive, and we'll talk on that in a minute, just some of the focus of the throne speech will outline the government perspectives and policy objectives over their term. So we talk about broadly what how the government within a minority is certainly going to be part and parcel of what dictates their plans and how they're going to have to keep confidence in the House at least in the short term. So and then to that extent, in the same vein, with Poilievre losing his seat, the Conservatives have stated publicly that they would, at least on the issues as relates to international trade and specific to the United States, they would be backing the government. Outside of that, obviously, they're going to have to get those budgets, set those priorities. And then moving into the parliamentary calendar should end sometime in late June, as sort of the convention that usually adjourns sometime around June 24th, St. John Baptiste Day. So we'll be traveling through into the summer. I would imagine that the government will probably, once they get that budget done, which is now overdue, they'll be transitioning into reactionary mode during the summer break. If there's something pops up as it relates to tariffs or the situation, either in the United States or and to a lesser extent, geopolitical issues that are ongoing throughout the world, be it in Europe, the war there, or what has now popped up, certainly in between India and Pakistan. There might have to be some reactions based on that. But certainly, Parliament will likely be adjourned until that time. And then we're coming back into the September time frame where obviously the committees should be struck by about this time, which offers us a bit more opportunity to engage with the government in the coming months. And as new people come into these roles, it gives us an opportunity to obviously engage with them and to bring forth some of the issues that we have outstanding and specific to that issue as relates to the luxury tax. And then from there, you can expect a pretty normal in the context of everything going on geopolitically, parliamentary sitting schedule going on into the fall and into the winter. So I'll go on to the next slide. So obviously, as I said, Carney does have a couple of challenges that he has to face, and part of that is going to be working in a minority parliament situation. He is going to need a dance partner on many of the issues he wants to move forward to. So what that means is that he has to get a bit more consensus, and certainly some another dance partner when he comes to confidence votes. As I mentioned earlier, with Conservatives stating that they would back the Carney government as it relates to economic measures and trade measures. We certainly the government's going to have to move on other issues. So from that perspective, it gives a bit more opportunity from us from an engagement standpoint from not only the House of Commons but also into the Senate as we work through this minority parliament. he does not hold that balance of power, and so cannot ram pieces of legislation through. He really has to find consensus within Parliament itself. So again, to that point, that broad engagement piece of working with parliamentarians across the aisle, being able to press some of those issues we're working on, certainly becomes those people become a little bit more influential. And then when we look at there obviously is a second chamber, and I think in the hustle and bustle of the election that we just went through, we do have to acknowledge that right now the Liberals have to deal with a no party structure, or at least a fragmented party structure in the Senate. So again, that offers us some opportunity from an engagement piece, because all pieces of legislation that go through the House and eventually have to land in the Senate for the upper chamber's approval. So really, again, it leads to some more opportunities and more engagement, because we can utilize some of those connections and those senators, specifically those that are impacted by those changes, to be able to push the government to make or at least better informed decisions, and reverse some of the decisions that were made under the Trudeau government. And to that end, it should note that the Mark Carney administration, it might seem like, and the media does report it pretty broadly, that this is a historic fourth term for the Liberal government. My perspective is that these are two different governments. I wouldn't consider this to be a fourth administration successfully, in so much as Mark Carney has an entirely different perspective on what's happening in Canada. And from that end, I think there's a greater opportunity for engagement. So if I could switch over to the next one, and we'll probably there we go right to so Mark Carney's perspective, obviously, and if we look back at what he communicated during the campaign, uniting Canada is certainly part and parcel of not only his campaign, but is part of his mandate. So when we look at what he needs to do, realistically, he has to focus more so on developing those Canadian industries and working within the confines of our own, not only our own country, but then expanding out our trade and economic policies to include other countries and other areas outside of Canada, US, sort of conundrum that we're facing right now. So he's going to have to move pretty swiftly. And I think obviously the budget's going to reflect that. I know that their team has been working pretty diligently on this, and the basis of it was drafted up during the campaign. But overall, he has to strengthen those relationships outside of that Canada US, and I think we're going to see a reflection of that. But to the same level, again, I'll state that he has to focus on Canadian industry and the promotion of Canadian industry, and those policies and measures that were taken in the past do not reflect the current reality. So from that perspective, he's going to have a pretty monumental task ahead of him. And again, to that point, he's going to have to do that in the minority parliament. So we'll just move to the next slide. So again, economy, trade, safety, and security are going to be his main focus. Enabling those investments within Canada, and I think part of this is going to have to be a focus, at least from a spending perspective, on investing in Canada, but also investing in defense spending. I think what the fractures between Canada, US, and I think it's shown in Europe, specifically, more poignantly, considering the war that's going on there. But within the Canadian context, the development and promotion of Canadian industry, which has had a pretty deep impact on some of the policies that the Trudeau government has impacted over the last 10 years or so, then he's really going to have to make some of those changes. So again, and it goes to that opportunity again. So he's made some pretty broad statements. If you look at cutting taxes on the middle class, well, every political party likes to say that they're going to cut the middle class. And to be quite frank, my time in government has shown me that there is absolutely nobody that can define the middle class within Canada. But at the same time, it's a campaign promise that he had to that he focused on, and certainly he's going to have to make some inroads in there. And again, to that point that he has no clear 4-year mandate here. He's going to have to wait. He's going to have to work on this as time goes on. So some of the other issues, obviously capping immigration, I think all parties have been in agreement on that, and then balancing the federal budget, I think is going to be of prime importance. But again, to that bigger issue right now, I think for them from a spending perspective, is going to have to be that investment piece, but also from a piece. One of the biggest issues that we've seen from that geopolitical perspective is obviously the Arctic, and Arctic sovereignty is going to be a pretty clear focus of this government. And I think those two or three things that I mentioned before all tie into, so the infrastructure that the government's going to have to put in place to secure not only the border to the south, but obviously the border to the north as well. If we can just move on to the next one. So again, as we move through those sort of the issues that the government's going to be facing, and some of the appointments and pieces of legislation and that speech from the throne that lays out those priorities for them. Again, those are our key engagement opportunities from the cabinet selection right through to the mandate letters. Once the cabinet gets named over the summer, I do expect, at least from the perspective of each ministry, they're going to get their mandate letters, which dictates what they need to accomplish in their role. And I think, as we start to get a clear picture of who's going to be in these roles, not only from the ministerial perspective, but from the staff perspective, to not only map those out, and myself and Anthony will work together to create those maps, and to find those individuals that we can engage with, but to really push those points that we're trying to make some changes. And then when we get back into Parliament, just as it relates to the committee formation, that's really going to be a key point as well, because in minority parliaments, we generally see the committees have a fair bit more power. And from that perspective, engaging with them, and as I mentioned earlier, engaging with the upper house as well as they form their committees. And then, of course, budgets. The budget process never really quite ends. By the time we get out of the pre-budget consultations, we're really into the drafting phase, and then committee study perspective. So really, over the next 12 months, we really do have a lot of opportunity to engage with this government and make those changes, so that we have something a bit more tangible. And just some of the staffing changes as well leads to new perspectives as people get briefed up and sort of engaged on their files, and they work within the confines of their new roles. It's really important to be able to be there and provide them that information, so that they can, make informed decisions, so they can see the economic impact that some of these decisions have made, and we can change those. And I think that, all things considered, the best possible outcome from a government relations perspective is to have an election. It really brings in new blood, and it gives fresh opportunity and perspective to those people. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thanks, Stuart. I mean, a lot to unpack, and it definitely shows the components that fit together on that. And I think, as I'll look into the chat, but what I really wanted to kind of reiterate is this point that, and Stuart, I think you said it perfectly at the end there, which is the good thing about the election is that it's a forcing function. Now, directionally, we have new members of government elected. Yeah, sure, it's not yet a majority. So there is that minority aspect. But what we wanted to demonstrate here is that you can see that there is quite a bit of work for us to do, both in terms of the education and then ultimately the influence. And we've identified a couple points that we have here about campaigns and timelines and ministers' announcements, et cetera. So I'll see, I think we've got Isan raised a hand. So Isan, go ahead. You can unmute yourself and ask a question.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for the presentation, Stuart. Thank you to Anthony and the board for all the work that you guys have done last year. The two questions that I have. So during the campaign, one of the Conservative Party announced a policy measure that they would implement if successful, that really targeted our industry. So how does that play into this? Was that like how did you perceive that? And then, secondly, in terms of the opportunities for dealing with the luxury tax issue specifically, um, maybe you can. I understand you're saying we have lots of opportunities, but what specifically would be your recommendations for things that um, outside of the conversation of the economic impact? Like, what are the things that we can do, knowing that they're in a minority government, and finding those opportunities of specific MPs, for example, that might be impacted, that we can get to support us on these, and going with like a self approach. So maybe I'll stop there and let you comment on those two. Thank you.
Sure, and I apologize because I broke up. My connection broke up just in the first part of your question, but I certainly address the second part, and maybe give you time if you could just reiterate your first part of that question. But as an engagement piece, not only the economic aspect of it, is certainly we can provide other we can provide other materials outside of that. But obviously, from an engagement piece, when we look at the other parties and in that minority situation, as you said, we can certainly utilize other parties to put pressure on, and specifically targeting those members and those senators that represent areas that are impacted, but also being able to provide good and solid information of how the economic benefit, not only the economic benefits, but the general benefits that would be, attributed by removing that specific tax measure. In reality, it's about providing good information to the government. At the end of the day, you can only lead a horse to water, and it's a much overused adage. But at the same time, being able to provide them with good information that they can make informed decisions rather than sort of what is politically low-hanging fruit. And I think in a lot of respects, I think the decision to make this became just that low-hanging fruit. And I think the pragmatism that we're seeing out of the Carney government, and not only that, but Parliament itself, is to be able to provide them that information so they can make more or better informed decisions. And so I apologize. I lost a bit of your first half of the question. I was just wondering if you restate that.
Totally. And Anthony, you can step in here if you want to correct. But my understanding was that there was a policy proposal made by the Conservatives that, if elected, they would enact um, changes to the tax rules that would prevent the deduction of expenses associated with the use of business jets.
Yes.
They would, and Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to misstate it, but that was my understanding of what the proposal was.
Well, you're right. So I guess the couple things that I'd say. The first, as it relates to the Conservatives, I mean, one way to look at it is, well, the ship has kind of sailed a little bit with respect to their opportunity to form government. So that's one. I think that a bigger opportunity is on the Liberal side. So first, I see, for example, I mean, I just look off to my screen, I see in participants, Ronya from Bombardier, but our friends at Bombardier hosted Prime Minister Carney on a tour. Now, let's take advantage of these tailwinds when it comes to luxury tax. Stuart had mentioned that in a campaign interview, Prime Minister Carney was asked, "Hey, have you given any thought to this luxury tax?" Now, it's actually a good thing that he said, "No, I haven't really thought about it," because he's not predisposed to one thought or another. So I want to ride the tailwinds of the tariff, the tailwinds of a Trump administration, and say, look, let's think about that made in Canada solution. Let's think about making sure that we unlock business. And that's why we've designed this 30, 60, 90-day plan to leverage what the Liberals said they would do as if elected. Well, now they're elected. Let's hold them to account for that. So I'm not totally dismissing what the Conservatives said, because that was a concern. First, I mean, we were very active. I mean, it was I think the I can't recall a time where the association inserted itself into an election campaign the way we did it Saturday at 1 a.m. And for our members that were entertaining, this is just a great reminder that, engaging with that political speaker, it's a bit like juggling chainsaws. You never know how it may look great at the beginning, but it could also really hurt you at the same time. And so in this instance, we're going to continue with this new government and leverage these tailwinds. And I think we have enough to educate to say that, look, it's time to recognize that the select luxury items tax is not appropriate. It impedes our business. It's impacting Canadians' ability to work. And at a time when everybody's talking about jobs going to the States, let's celebrate keeping them in Canada and doing everything we can to keep it here. That's going to be our position. So
Thank you. I made sure to wear my Bombardier hat.
Noted, Alexandre. Well done. You look good in
noted in the record, right?
it.
So I'll look to see if there's any additional questions for Stuart. If not, what we'll do is I'll probably return a little bit, well, basically about 33 minutes, maybe 30 minutes after I kind of give my closing remarks, but I'll leave an opportunity to see if, whether it's anything in the chat or if any hands specifically go up in Zoom,
I
whether
think
it's
Phil has his hand up.
I do. I
There
just
we
couldn't
go.
figure, I'm sorry, I couldn't figure out how to put my hand up virtually, so I thought I'd go old school.
That's right.
And first and foremost, just an outstanding job to the CBAA team and the membership for driving aviation goals forward in an interesting environment. I'm kind of curious about first principles, setting aside the obvious things, agendas and files that are uppermost. But Stuart, I'm curious, fundamental challenge that I think we probably all are curious about, at least I'm curious about. Canada's federal national aviation plan focuses on 6 or 8 airports out of the 1,800 plus airports, and seems that causes Transport Canada, NAV Canada, to lose sight of the bigger picture. I'm just curious your thoughts on how to realign um, those objectives and thoughts to a more national scope.
I think it's an excellent point, and I think it certainly, from the perspective I get, it certainly wasn't intended, but it's easy to see how the government could lose focus within that specter. I think obviously it's an education, and not only an education, but a sort of engagement piece that I think it's part of the focus that we need to work on, is to make sure that it's a more nationalistic approach. And it's or a national approach, I should say, not nationalistic, but a national approach, rather than just focusing on those large airports and the ones identified there. So I think part of that engagement is really about working with the Transport and Nav Canada, so that they understand, and policymakers, on Parliament as well. And I think to a lesser extent them, just because, I think, based on the very nature of the institution as it stands, they sort of get it. But I think, the department's interpretation, it can certainly float to, well, our focus needs to be just on these airports. So I think in a broad stroke, we need to have a good education platform, and so that those people that we're engaging with have an understanding that that can't only be the focus. There are a whole series of other airports and that need to be addressed, and issues that need to be looked at within that scope. So I think that's part and parcel of the discussions we need to have, just to keep reminding them that there are, other airports than those identified.
And my last question, before I forget, super presentation, by the way. So I'm kind of curious that, south of the border, my understanding is all aviation fuel related taxes go into a pot funding aviation activities by the FAA. Whereas in Canada, we're the exact opposite. And subsequently, with our tax dollars going into the broader tax pot, it seems that transport doesn't have the funding to facilitate next generation technologies, improvements, policies, procedures, staffing, and then being able to take those tax dollars and push downwards towards airports, pilots, aircraft manufacturers, OEMs, R&D, from a broader industry perspective. Is there any opportunity to fix that?
I'll build in just really quickly because it's very timely, Phil. I was on a call this morning where Transport was providing an update on the USOP, the ICAO audit, and Transport had had 243 corrective action plans and a total of 1,105 deliverables. So the challenge is we are going to take this national approach. Next week, you'll find a letter that I've already sent to ADM. So what you've touched on is this call that we've made already in the past, and we want to renew based on these, let's call them tailwinds. And I think, Stuart, you said it right, nationalistic, right? There is a point to say here, as a nation, as Canada, and we think coast to coast to coast, we celebrate that. What are we doing about this entire ecosystem? The thing you'll see next week is the letter that we pushed to ADM about, hey, in 2025, the government put already Transport Canada, the role and the obligation of the airport system is to encourage Canadian economy. So we're going to highlight how decisions, how actions, both by the airport authorities, by the air navigation service provider, by the government itself, how they actually hinder our progress, our ability. And so when I look back to that audit with this implementation score of 65%, I think even Transport will tell you that the list of countries that are, quote, our peers in that USOP audit are not as desirable as they would like it to be. So there's a lot of work to play for. Now, that model is something that needs to be addressed, but I would say that that's going to be a longer form of the conversation, but we need to turn the eyes to the idea of if we don't think of this entire ecosystem as being important, then it's no surprise if it starts to fall apart. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. With that, then, I'll give it a last chance, looking up at the participants list, whether on videos, Phil, you are caught with your hand up, or if anyone's out there, I don't see anything yet, then maybe what I'll do is just start the process of returning a little bit of time back to you. So on behalf of the CBAA, really want to extend a sincere thanks to each of you for taking the time out of your day to join us. This helps us not just do the association's activities, that is to say our annual general obligations, but it also feeds us a little bit of time and structure for our annual convention. And that's what's coming up, our engagement, June 10th through 12th. Our convention in Vancouver is a great opportunity where we can connect, we can network, we can further this conversation about business aviation. So we appreciate the valuable insights and discussions that each of you brought to the table. I know there's many more. There's some exciting tools that we're going to release within the next 2 weeks, basically, that will enable you to have the very latest at your fingertips. It will leverage the story of business aviation and the work we've undertaken with our economic impact study, the work that compensation survey that will come out shortly. And in so doing, we'll all be empowered with the story of business aviation, and together we can act as a stronger voice. So thanks again for your continued support and the commitment to the association. I'll give you back, say, 26 minutes. Amy is posted in the chat. And in addition to this, you can find some information there. So thanks to each of you for taking the time out of your day to join us. Thanks, everyone.